Good morning, everyone. It's Reverend Mike Capron. It's Transfiguration Sunday. That's the day we remember the text from Matthew, Mark, and Luke about Jesus going up on the mountain and glowing and the voice being heard from God. I have a longish reading from Luke's gospel with the stuff that comes before that, which is really important, and the stuff that comes after it. If you only have time to listen to one thing, listen to the Bible itself and don't bother with my sermon about it. But I like both, so I hope you'll hang for both. Here we go, Luke 9:18 to 45. Once, when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets of long ago come back to life." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" And Peter answered, "God's Messiah." Jesus strictly warned them not to tell this to anyone. And he said, "The Son of Man," that's Jesus, "must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law. And he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Truly, I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God." About 8 days after this, Jesus took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. He's on his way to Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let's put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't really know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. The next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a large crowd met him. A man in the crowd cried out, "Teacher, teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child. A spirit seizes him, and he suddenly screams, and it throws him into convulsions so that he foams at the mouth. It scarcely ever leaves him and is destroying him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not." Jesus replied, "You unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I stay with you and put up with you? Bring your son here." Even while the boy was coming, the demon threw him to the ground in a convulsion. But Jesus rebuked the impure spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And they were all amazed at the greatness of God. While everyone was marveling at all that Jesus did, he said to his disciples, "Listen carefully to what I am about to tell you. The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men." But they did not understand what this meant. It was hidden from them, so that they did not grasp it, and they were afraid to ask him about it. This ends our reading. So Peter, James, and John follow Jesus up onto Mount Tabor. They have this fantastic mountaintop experience, an amazing vision. They literally hear the voice of God. But they can't tell anyone about it because there's no cell phone service up there. But what goes up must come down, and so down the mountain they come. How long will their bliss last? Not long. They already have a backlog of 350 emails, to say nothing of Twitter, but most of all, there is a series of desperate texts from Andrew asking for help with an emergency. Intertwined with Andrew's messages are a bunch more from Judas, complaining that none of the other disciples can do anything right. He demands that Peter, James, and John get down there right away and handle the situation. Apparently, some man's son is infested by a spirit that gives him seizures. Thaddeus and Matthew have been working the problem all day, trying to cast it out, but no luck. Now, for some of you who may be hearing this, I'm speaking something of a foreign language. There are some among us who are not really interested in technology, nor in internet culture, and may not have internet service in their home. Moreover, it's also true that some of you who hear this sermon are retired people. So it would be reasonable to ask if I should even preach a sermon relating to the meaning of work, much less one where a major theme is the way that technology has changed work. I think it's reasonable to speak about this subject, if for no other reason than to let you know what your children and grandchildren are facing out there. So let me start by saying I suspect that everyone hearing my voice has a good work ethic. During your working years, you worked hard at whatever profession you found yourself in. And I include in that all of you whose primary job was being a homemaker and a parent, domestic engineers, as my father used to joke about my mother. Moreover, it isn't like you have nothing to do now. Meals still need to be prepared and the dishes still need to be done, right? But for those still in their careers, you don't need me to tell you that the nature of work has changed, and often not for the better. The pace keeps accelerating, and technology may have only made it worse. Picture someone in an office in 1980. One of their responsibilities is to handle correspondence. With a secretary to take dictation and do the typing, maybe they handled 6 letters in an afternoon. Then along comes email. Handling emails is much quicker. It saves paper, postage, and you probably don't need the secretary. So email has saved this person time, right? Wrong. You have to put a lot of thought and effort into long-form letters, but emails can be casual, so people send exponentially more emails and expect their replies much sooner. So our correspondence person is now more burdened than ever. Social media, including tools like Slack, may just make it all worse. You need to be able to keep up with messages in nearly real time to be a part of the organization, but you also need to focus on your own individual work, and those two things are in conflict. All that switching between modes leaves you exhausted. Moreover, your employer may use computer-driven surveillance to track your every move and pressure you to be even more productive. It's no wonder that a lot of people have been resigning to look for greener pastures in the current hot labor market. Last week, we talked about clergy and politicians being compromised and exploiting others. Employers, especially large employers, are probably compromised in the same way. People are often expected to process emails on vacation and still complain that when they get back, they are already so far behind that they wonder if the time off was worth it. God's commandment to take Sabbath seems very timely, eh? But Amazon has an answer to that. It is, of course, a technological device. The company has been under some fire for a report about its warehouse workers whose every move is tracked, and those workers live in fear of being fired for working too slowly. But for those warehouse workers, Amazon has introduced a program called Amazon, as in Zen Buddhism. Cute name, huh? Amazon. Employees can visit Amazon stations and watch short videos featuring easy-to-follow well-being activities, including guided meditations and positive affirmations. It's self-care, I think, with a dystopian bent, in which the solution for blue-collar job burnout is screen time. One of the many people leaving comments on the New York Times story I'm quoting had this to say: "Somewhere along the way, work became a religion in the U.S. Don't question things, that's heresy. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, etc. It stopped being work, something for you to do between certain hours, and started being a cult. Companies expected you to treat your job as your highest priority, over family, over your own health. Strive to move up the ladder so they had something to hold over you. Work so much that you didn't have time to realize how much of your money went into things to help you work more. The lunches you buy at your desk, full-time childcare, clothes to dress for the job you want, not the job you have." The weird thing about these Amazon stations and a lot of the current emphasis on mindfulness is this: it instrumentalizes our spiritual practices. Now, what does that mean, to instrumentalize something? It means that you turn it into an instrument, a device like a musical instrument, or a tool like a hammer, something you use to accomplish some purpose beyond the thing itself. So to instrumentalize a spiritual practice or a religion is putting the wrong thing first. You devise some goal, something that arises out of self-interest or lust or greed, and you adapt prayer, Bible, church, Jesus, meditation, mindfulness, whatever, to serve your pursuit of that goal. Now, the Bible has an official name for this. It's called idolatry. But in practice, in the modern world, it's a lot more subtle than bowing down before some stone statue. So rather than use a pejorative name like idolatry, I'm going to call it putting the wrong thing first. This will, of course, lead to an argument about what should be first and what should be last. Or to put it more plainly, what is actually real? If you look at it one way, the thing that happened with Jesus up on the mountain is the most real thing of all. But if you look at it another way, what happened with Jesus was not real life at all. It doesn't generate a paycheck. It doesn't get anything off of your to-do list. Really, it's a distraction. I mean, prayer and spiritual experiences are wonderful, but don't we have to live in the real world? Concrete reality, that's the thing. If you want to hang out with Jesus, do it on your own time. Make sure you clock out first. That's what the world tells us. I argue that we should look at time in another way. What is really real is not the concrete things we attend to in life. I mean, look, we all have to do our laundry, but are you going to consider laundry to be the center point of your life? Especially when compared to hanging out with Jesus and hearing the voice of God? I've sometimes mocked Peter for his confused ramblings on top of the mountain. Master, it's good for us to be here. But fundamentally, Peter is completely right. It is good for us to be here with Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, and all the rest of the great cloud of witnesses. Peter, God bless him, recognizes something that is real and truly important. The very structure of this passage in Luke, as well as in Mark and Matthew, attests that Peter is right on target. The time spent with Jesus on the mountaintop, where wonders are seen and God is heard, that's the center of everything. That is the part of Peter's life that is completely and truly real. You know, picture something hitting a smooth surface of water. The center of the splash is the largest and the most important part, but round ripples flow out from that. The Transfiguration is the center of this passage. What comes after? A spirit that's can't be handled by worldly means. The other Gospels say it can only be cast out by prayer, remembering that prayer is contact with God, and contact with God being what happened in the mountain. That's what comes after. What comes before the Transfiguration? Well, Jesus makes a comparison. He compares the value of ordinary life to the life of a disciple. From a dollars and cents comparison, clearly the life of a disciple is worth less than a materially successful life. But Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? This week of all weeks, I wish that Vladimir Putin would take those words to heart. I heard a news story this morning indicating that he may actually be serious about his Russian Orthodox faith. But in the name of gaining the world, or at least hoping to gain some kind of geopolitical security, he has made everyone in Ukraine very insecure and much of the rest of the world extra anxious. If you claim to follow Jesus and you declare war in the name of preserving peace, something is very seriously wrong with both your thinking and your prayer life. Jesus asks his apostles who the crowds say that he is, and the crowds have many answers. And lots of people today will say lots of things about Jesus, often things that Jesus would never approve of. Maybe that's why Jesus doesn't seem to want that truth about him spread around at that time by the apostles. He knows that others will exploit his identity and hamper his ministry. But in Luke 9, several vital truths are uttered. Jesus is God's Messiah. This is confirmed by the voice on the mountain. This is my son whom I have chosen. Listen to him. Also, Jesus explains that he will suffer, be rejected, and killed. The life of both Jesus and his followers is not guided by principles of self-preservation and self-interest. Those are not our highest values. They are not the really real. Focus on the really real, my friends. Stay close to Jesus and put your trust in him. Pray without ceasing, in and out of season. Seek the presence of the Lord. Listen for God's word in your life. Pray that God will touch the hearts of those who plan and do evil. Speaking of which, there's a lovely appeal from Pope Francis to ask everyone, believers and non-believers alike, to make March 2nd, Ash Wednesday, a day of prayer and fasting for peace. I'm going to participate and fast on that day. In my opinion, the benefit of fasting is the constant reminders from my tummy. I notice that I'm hungry, and it reminds me that I'm supposed to be praying, so I pray. And I invite you to participate in this as a spiritual discipline. Pay attention to sensible medical advice. Everybody has a different metabolism and people have various medical conditions. I personally am going to stop eating on Tuesday when I go to bed and not eat again until Thursday breakfast. But maybe you just skip one meal. Some people drink juice. I'm not going to do that, but I know my body. The point is to do something intentional to remind you to pray. And in this particular circumstance, when you pray, pray for peace in the world. You know, what's happening in Ukraine is horrible, but it's by no means the only place where there's conflict and violence. And such things are definitely counter to what the Prince of Peace would have us focus on. So thank you all. May God bless. Anybody who wants to message me or contact me, I'd love to talk to you about any of these subjects. Take care.